Recently, I did a video on the iFi Zen Air DAC, and I wasn't exactly highly impressed. This unit is the iFi Zen Air Can. Can it change my mind? Keep watching to find out. What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I want to talk to you guys about the iFi Zen Air Can featuring the Zen Air DAC. Now, before I get into the can, okay, yeah, we'll go with it. Before I get into the can, I do want to thank iFi for sending the product in for review. They're not paying me to say anything, so all thoughts and opinions are of my own. All right, so for the Zen Air Can, first of all, this is strictly an amplifier. Now, this is a lighter version of the Zen Can, which I will talk about more as I get into this video, but this does retail in at just $99, so it's definitely a budget headphone amplifier option. All right, so starting off, inside the box, of course, you're going to get the unit itself, and then you're also going to get a USB-A to 5-volt DC connection cable that will connect into the back of the amplifier. Now, do take note, just like on the Zen Air DAC, that the cable is pretty short. So know that for your connections, or if you want to swap it out for a different cable, just kind of know that going in. And as for the unit, starting on the back, we can see here you get a few different connection options. Now, you do have a single-ended 3.5mm connection. This is for PC, mobile, any type options like that. Then you get 2 sets of RCA connections here, which is really nice to be able to switch out, and you can have all of those plugged in at once. And then going around to the front of the device, we start seeing on the left, you have, of course, the power on-off button, and then you get an input switch, which is very nice. You can choose whichever inputs that you want to use out of the back of the device. Then you also get a 3-gain button here. Now, the default is the 0. There is no decibel gain on that one. Then you get a 9 decibel gain and an 18 decibel gain. The volume pot is analog, which is a gold accent casing on it. So you just know that this is actually a casing. It's not the volume pot itself. And then you get the option of either a 6.3 single-ended connector, or you can do a 4.4 balance connector. Now, note for this impression review that I'm doing here, I did everything strictly out of the 6.3. Then at the far right, you get the staple iFi EQ feature of either X bass, X space, or then you can press the toggle for X bass, X space together, which is a nice option, something that we didn't get on the iFi Zen Air DAC. Now, the amp in the Zen Air Can is very similar to the one that's in the Zen Air DAC. There are definitely some differences though, and I'm going to pop up a spec sheet as I kind of walk you guys through this. Power-wise here, we do see that there's 1200 milliwatts at 32 ohms. There's 616 milliwatts at 64 ohms, or 75 milliwatts at 600 ohms. So there's definitely more juice on this amp than the one that's included in the Zen Air DAC. Also, when you first power this on, it is going to take a few seconds to power up. You're going to see a light flash on there. Now, this is pretty typical of the headphone amplifiers I've come across. They have some type of warm-up feature, and I believe that's what's going on here as it connects to the, the source that you have selected on the front. And then the last thing to note before I get into sound is just that this is definitely, all plastic feeling, just like it was on the Zen Air DAC. It does have the rubber feet on the bottom as well. But the bigger thing I would say here is because this is an amplifier and there's more plugins to it, it's definitely got more heft to it, feels more weighty, and aesthetically, this looks pretty nice on a stack as well. And so for my sound impressions, I did, of course, use both of these. As I said, you do have to have a DAC of some kind plugged into this anyway. And with the synergy and the aesthetics of this, I wanted to test these out as a single unit together. Now, one thing to note is I did find out with the Zen Air DAC, you want to have the volume pot at about 75% to give this truly enough juice to get going on the amp. Other DACs, you may want to crank those all the way up 100% and then let your amp be the volume on there. This is kind of the sweet spot that I found for this particular stack, so just note that. And then, of course, as a generalized sound signature, I suppose if you will, because I'm using the Zen Air DAC, it is the Burr Brown chip, so it's going to be more of a, a warmer feeling coming out of the amp itself, and I wanted to kind of sample that to see if that was still going to be the case with the different headphones that I test. And with that, as far as headphones, I pretty much did the same gambit as I did with the DAC. I have my low impedance headphones, such as my Focal Radiance, the Meze 99s, and the 109s. And then for higher impedance, I've got my ZMF Atriums, and then I've got my Aeon 2 Noir, which not high impedance, but it does require some juice to get that thing going. So that was kind of my sample rates here. IEMs wise, I did actually test my 10 iFi T3 Plus, and then I just got in the SoundNotes 0, so I also tested those on this as I had them on hand. All right, and so to no surprise, the sound that I was getting out of this amp was more of that warmer sound that I was getting out of the DAC. Now, the difference here is that I would say the sound that I was getting out of the amp definitely seemed a little bit more brought in and more tighter. Bass seemed a little tighter. I wouldn't say necessarily more punchier, but just, you could tell that this is an amp built for just an amp, whereas this is the 2-in-1, and sometimes you're going to find better sound coming out of something that's strictly made for that. Not always. I'm just saying in this case it was for me. And also, I wouldn't say that it was necessarily more airy or anything like that, but it did handle that a little bit better, especially in something like the Aeon 2 Noirs. And I actually have a track impression I'm going to talk to you guys here in a second about. But overall, I would say I did enjoy this a little bit better than I enjoyed the sound coming out of the Zen Air DAC. If you remember on the Zen Air DAC, I did not care for the X bass at all. I thought it was way overdone. I am happy to report on the Zen Air Can, this is a much better implementation, at least from what I'm used to hearing on iFi products. The X bass was just a nice subtle boost to bass. The X bass was a nice subtle boost to the upper airiness. And I actually thought on some headphones, it definitely complemented them very well for the headphones, such as my Radiance, using the X bass on that gave it just a little more air up there. Definitely noticed that. And the X bass on my Noirs did not rattle them like the Can did. It actually gave them a nice little boost there as well. So thumbs up, nice implementation of the X bass and X bass again here by iFi. And I told you guys I was going to give you a quick track example of what I'm talking about with the sound that's coming out of this. So the song Break by Santana featuring Ali Brooke, that was one song that I listened to quite a bit with both of these devices and listened especially on my different headphones. Now, one thing I'll say with the X space button, that song is very good for mid-range and for vocals, and you got the guitar playing all throughout by Santana. It's just, I love that song. It sounds really, really good. With the X space button pressed in and working, I definitely got that little extra bit of airiness if a headphone or an IEM didn't necessarily have that. And it was a nice, just kind of aha moment for me when I was using this stack together that I started to like this more and more for what this Zen Air Can is. And I suppose since I'm talking about the X bass and X bass, I do want to give one word of caution. When you are switching between the X bass and X bass, I did notice a little bit of a spike of volume when I was going through those. So, if you're going to be toggling through these when you're sampling tracks, I would probably turn that down before you toggle to the next one, then turn it back up, then turn it back down, just because it can give you a spike of volume in your ear and may not be a pleasant experience. One other thing I should note, I think I failed to mention back at the beginning, was when I went through the different headphones on this amp, I did use the 9 dB setting for some of my harder to derive headphones, such as my Noirs and my Atriums, and that worked out really, really well. I didn't feel like it gave it too much power or that it did anything wonky to the sound signature or anything like that. So definitely implemented well. 18 decibel gain, I would be very curious to hear what that would actually be for, but I definitely did not need to do that. Right, and so in case you haven't noticed, I definitely enjoyed the Zen Air Can more so than the Zen Air DAC. And if I were to have to recommend one or the other, I would definitely recommend the Can, simply because I like the sound output that it put through as an amplifier and being able to power different things, and for the sound just being more controlled. It's the best way I know how to put that. However, I could see somebody wanting to spring for both as a DAC amp setup, just because it does look very nice and sitting on a desk. So the Zen Air Can is as it sounds. It's a lighter version that you can get up and running with higher fidelity sound, 3 different input options, and the ability to go single-ended or balanced out. I guess it's safe to say that this is more than just a can of air. Hopefully this video helped you decide if you're considering purchasing either the can or the DAC or both. I'm going to let you guys get back to doing whatever it is that you do. I'm going to go work on some more iFi things that will be coming up soon. And until then, I will see you in the next one.